Welcome to Making Connection Studio. As the Making Connection connects the children or youth to positive through holistic development and secular ethics. I am Nisha. Today I am very fortunate to interview with Mr. and Mrs. Jim and John, who are from the United States of the America, who are one of the great supporters of the Tonglen. They are supporting 3 Tonglen children. No doubt they are a great compassionate people. So welcome, madam and sir.
Thank you, Nisha. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Thank you. So, how did you discover or connect it to the Tonglen?
Yeah, it came from, Joan and I came with some friends in 2013, and before we came I told Joan that she would see many poor people, or some poor people, but probably not best to give money to each person she sees, but rather to wait and we would see how to do something of good benefit. So then afterwards I contacted my friend's wife, Chokila, and she knew of Tonglen, and so she connected us with Tonglen, and then we came last year and got to meet Jamyan and the operation and thought it was very good. So now a year later we're back.
So, I believe you are an experienced man or woman in business. So, is management and leadership is the key factor of the success?
Well, I would say that management and leadership are different. The leadership requires strategic thinking. It requires the ability to get people to work with you and to work towards a common goal. And management is the operation to make that happen. And they're both very necessary. And really, to be successful, you need both. It's a very good question.
For me, to manage the human is very complicated. And human mind is very sensitive. Which is the more difficult to manage, is man or things?
Well, I think it depends on the job, the particular role. It could be at different times difference. And I would say in general, when a person is starting out in the workforce, a little bit more important to know the things and to know how to do the job. And they would not be managing other people. They should be a good member of society. They should get along with people, just as they would get along with friends or something. But then as they progress, maybe they become a manager, then it's very important to know about how to manage, how to deal with people, how to understand people. Everyone is different. That becomes most important then. Joan, do you have any thoughts?
I think it's a real balance, but people make the world happen and make the work happen. So the bottom line really is people for me.
You are well educated as well. You worked in the government. So what do you see the future of the world in the younger generation?
Well, I think we're at a very interesting point in our world's history. I think there are many more opportunities for the next generation. I also think there are more challenges. As we become more technologically astute and it's more pervasive, we have to deal with things like artificial intelligence and how are we going to manage all of that. Climate change is a huge issue, and I believe we really have 1 or 2 more generations of people to solve that problem, or we'll be in very, very difficult circumstances. And then we have the global economy, which provides, I believe, an amazing amount of opportunity to far more people than when we were in the industrial economy. So I'm very positive. I feel very good about the next generation. I see young people and have spent the last 3 days working with the young people here at Tonglen. It's amazing. There's a bright future for you all, really.
Okay. In India, there are many problems in society, such as inequality, caste system, or poverty. On top, younger generation are now becoming violence and addictions with drugs and not making a social value. Do you have this problem in America?
We do, we do. And we do not have the formal caste system as India has, but we do have inequalities. And in fact, I think the inequality has been growing in the last 20 years. But people have noticed that it depends quite a bit on where a child grew up, whether their family or whether their neighbors and community was well off or educated and successful. And so it's very much determined by the area they grew up in. And if they've grown up in an area where there's crime and people do not aspire to be educated, then they will have a difficult time. So we have this similar problems. Of course, there's always differences, but we have the problems as well.
So, do you think we need to promote or make awareness about social values such as secular ethics within younger generation in order to reduce these problems? And do we believe this kind of problems comes from lack of ethics?
Well, I think as the world becomes more complex, it's even more important that each individual has their own guiding principles and social ethics. People need to have compassion, understanding. At the same time, they need to be able to use their keen mind with discernment in order to have wisdom. And so, yes, social ethics are hugely important, even more so with the proliferation of so much technology. We need to understand where we're coming from with our heart and with our head before we jump in and start trying to do something in the world.
I would also add that one part of it is that when my parents were growing up, and before that, the formal churches were very important in society. And we learned some ethics through that. And there was, now in the US, maybe Europe also, churches are not quite as big, but they, and even independent of your feelings about religion, they did teach morals. They did teach, now it was according to maybe their beliefs, but that was where the beliefs came from. So without that as much presence in society, there is a bit of a vacuum, a need to learn morals, to ethics, social consciousness. So I think we need something to fulfill that and to so that it's talked about, thought about, taught in some cases. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, what would you advise us? What we should do when we become a responsible decision maker?
What to do? Well, I'll start with that. There's so much, and of course I do believe the basis is, again, within the person, a sense of compassion for your fellow human beings, a sense of service, but without education and a real ability to learn for lifelong learning, it would be more difficult. So I think that again, one needs to guide with the head and with the heart, and really have a compassion and care for your fellow individual, no matter what kind of work you're doing.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially the lifelong learning. And then earlier, your question about, is it more important how to know about things or people? So the lifelong learning and including learning about people. So I think that I'm still learning about people, and probably, hopefully, will continue to learn about people.
As we had discussion last 2 days and we talked about the education. So why education is important for you and for everyone?
Well, I think education opens a lot of doors for people, and education really is the foundation for the lifelong learning. Education gives you some basic knowledge, but it also gives you the ability to, as Jim was saying, learn how to learn, so that you can become a lifelong learner and you can continue to grow and develop and continue to make contributions to society even when society is changing. And I'm sure Jim has something to add to that.
I'm just thinking about, I guess one comment I would make is that I think I'm somewhat of a curious fellow. I just love to read. I've always loved to read, and so I enjoy that process. I would feel a little bit well, maybe bored if I wasn't able to keep learning and seeing things. And it's not just learning from a book or now the internet. It's learning from meeting people and hearing their story and thinking, what is it like for them? And so there are many, many ways to learn, but I enjoy all of them.
And you asked about education. What I've been very impressed with at Tonglen is that education is not just the academic. It's certainly academics are important, but it's the spiritual, it's the intellectual, the emotional, and that's all very important as a basis for education. And I just applaud what you're doing at Tonglen and how you're, very holistically looking at the process of education. It's wonderful.
So at last, I want to say thank you for your precious time to spend with us. So thanks.
Well, thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Nisha.
And we thank you because this has been rewarding to us to learn about your situation and what you're doing, and it's very rewarding to know of your work.
So thank you.
Thank you.